Welcome to week 6 of Calaveras Grown's live farm tours. Today actually we were going to follow the art of Thea shotgun, but we weren't able to do that yesterday, which is when we would have filmed it. We'll do that later in the week. So we're stayed here at the farm, and we're going to talk a little bit about grazing management, about what that can do for the land, how that can keep the animals healthier, keep us safer from fire, and some of the mechanisms that we can use to do that. So we're looking here at an area, pretty steep slope between a canal and a road here that is about 7 acres in size that we just grazed about the last week with about 60 hair sheep who will meet just here in a few minutes. And here you can see that along the road it's kind of unsightly to have a fence there, so we have this electric fence. The electric fence doesn't work all year, but this pasture, this paddock, won't grow back until next year anyway, when it starts raining again. And now the animals have eaten it down, and we don't have to get out there and weed eat it. We don't have to listen to the weed eater. And not only that, but the animals turned a lot of that material, whether it's brush or grass or other forbs, legumes, etc., that it turned that material into manure, which improves the health of the soil, actually feeds the soil organisms, keeps the soil retaining more moisture, and therefore over time we get a healthier environment. It actually retains carbon in the soil by doing this. But we have to make sure that we don't keep the animals too long in one spot, so they eat a lot of the things that we don't want them to. And we also need to make sure that when we do bring them in, they eat enough so they actually keep the brush down. And even with these sheep that we have, we can keep the brush down. So we use this netting. These are pieces of netting that we're going to walk along here as we go to where the animals are now, and then we'll move them into the next paddock that they're headed into. This area, this netting, excuse me, is they're 165 feet long, this particular type, and it takes it's nice with 2 people, but one person can clean it up, one roll, in about under 10 minutes, and a couple people can set it up in less than 10 minutes, even in brushy terrain. The only disadvantage is that it gets caught on stuff, but if you have an area along a road or even can put it down the center of a road, that's great. Although I will say that this is the last electric fence that we'll use for the year, because now it's too dry. The fire danger is then a little bit high with the electricity in the fence. And on top of that, it just doesn't work because there's no ground in the soil. And it's not like the animals are touching the electric fence. They learned about it once a long time ago in their young lives, and now they've moved on to realizing that they don't want anything to do with it. These are some areas that we've thinned most of the oak trees that were in this heavily brushed and wooded area out of. And then we bring the animals in, and the whole purpose of this is to set goals for what we're doing, what we want to do with a piece of land, and then to figure out what we're going to do in order to fulfill those goals. And in this case, one of the goals is to reduce the fire danger, to pretty much eliminate the risk of catastrophic fire taking out all the trees and the houses around us. Another one of the goals is to improve the health of the soil enough to where we're starting to get grasses, and especially perennial grasses, growing on the forest floor, similar to what we might have encountered if we had shown up in this spot way back at the beginning of the 1800s. And really looking at a plan for a forest 500 years in the future, which more of these trees will have to be thinned, and we'll do that over the course of my lifetime in this case. But now we're walking up here to the edge of this paddock, and we're going to sneak through a makeshift gate over here to get into where the animals are now. So like I say, we won't be using this electric fence anymore, so we're moving into paddocks that have hard fencing in them. We've saved all the weeding that would have had to be done. This grass was a couple feet tall. And we're at the edge of a little neighborhood here that's at pretty high risk of catastrophic fire, and we want to at least reduce some of the light fuels, even if we can't get to the heavy ones. There you go, thank you. So then we're going to enter a paddock that we actually just did a bunch of thinning and controlled burning in. And after this last rain, we also attempted to mulch parts of it. You can see that it actually kind of self-mulched here with some of the leaves from the trees. This was so thick that there was no way you would see any of those animals, and none of them would be in there. And the risk that was here just a few weeks ago, before we were able to thin this out and and get rid of a lot of that material, that flammable material, the risk that was here in terms of if fire came up this hill, or any fire started in there in the summertime, we would have been in really bad shape, because this would turn into an enormous catastrophe really quick. There's a lot of places like this, of course, left around. But we just done this, and now we actually, right after it rained, we came in here and we seeded with some ryegrass and several species of native California perennial grasses, and then we covered some of it with straw, what we could do with straw mulch, although a lot of it actually mulched itself. And then we brought the animals in to kind of use their hooves to push some of those seeds into the soil. And some of those seeds actually are starting to germinate, although it's going to be awful dry now and they probably won't get far. But we just moved the animals in here. As you can see, there's still a little bit of grass. The dandelions have grown up since they were in here just a week ago. And it's amazing how when the soil starts to improve, even this time of year, you can get a lot of regrowth from grazing in this very controlled way, where we're moving the animals all the time and really never giving them more than a few days, maximum of a week's amount of food in any one spot that they are. And so as you can hear, though, they're about ready to move on to greener pastures, because they're used to this. They've been doing this for years. We've been doing this for years with them. And most likely once we get over here, they actually, when Wade and I got together earlier, they already knew where they were going, but we had to make them wait for this little, for a little video. So they already went live a while back. So, good morning, sheep. You guys are cute. This ew's name is Orange Juice. She likes to eat oranges. One of the other advantages to the animals that we get of moving them constantly and never putting them in the same, don't bring them back to the same place when any parasites that they might have would have already gone through their whatever process they're going to do in the soil, whatever metamorphic process they're going to go through in the soil, and be ready to reinfest the host. So we don't bring them back. We look at those cycles to try to keep the animals healthier in terms of worms and other internal pests. The other big advantage is that we bring them in, and just right now we have all this Canadian bull thistle and Italian thistle that's that you can barely tell is thistle anymore, but because it's been eaten off so much. But they're just they do a really good job of controlling these invasive weeds if you bring them in at the correct time. And often it's hard to tell what the correct time is unless you're just very observant of the whole process. So we're going to head over here. And see Finley boy. He's probably hot. Finley's the dog that keeps them all safe from mountain lions and coyote predators. Not by actually fighting with those wild animals, but just his bark keeps them away. So we're going to move them into this area. They're going to be in here for just a few hours, actually. Here, sheep. Here, sheep. Here, sheep. Come on. Up, up, up. Up, up, up. Here, sheep. Here, sheep. Come on, sheep. I see Pedro coming running. Good boy, Pedro. Come on. There we go. Everybody's heard the call now. We got one little goat in here. His name's Happy. That's Happy. Good boy, Pedro. There we go. Everybody's in. I think Finley must be resting in the shade. So that's moving them isn't really that hard once they get the hang of what you're going to do. So this is a service that we can offer to you. We can offer sheep grazing. And we can come and figure out your fencing system and figure out how we can work with that, or set up fencing to make it work to basically reduce the fire hazard, improve the soil, sequester carbon in our soils locally, improve the water holding capacity of our soils, which will improve the water quality and longevity of quantity for our the downstream users of the water here as well. And so this is basically just an observation base. We move the animals based on, look, they've eaten what our goal it was for them to eat. They haven't started tearing the bark off the trees, although goats will start tearing the bark off the trees pretty much right away. So we get them to do what we want them to do and leave them in a space for the amount of time that is right for our goals. And right here, they're just going to be in here for a few hours, and we're going to make sure that on this brush that's starting to resprout, that they make sure that doesn't come back, because we did a lot of work in here already by hand with chainsaws and a lot of dangerous work for humans, and we need to keep that maintained with this herd of animals. And then also we're offering we don't have any right now. We're sold out of the meat from these animals, but they're the meat we butcher the males in order to keep the herd at an appropriate size, and so that's another product that we get from this system. But there's so many beneficial products that come out of holistic grazing management, or any kind of observation-based planned grazing. Let us help you figure out that system for yourself, or maybe even use these animals to graze down your fields, or even just your backyard. So thanks for watching Calaveras Grown Live. Next week we're going to have the artwork of Thea's shotgun. It's not going to be live because we don't have a cell service where she's at, but I'm sure that'll be enjoyable, and we'll see you then. So thanks for watching.